When we talk about the idea of Muslim nations forming a united army for Gaza, we are diving into one of the most debated and emotionally charged discussions of modern geopolitics. The concept has been raised countless times in public forums, religious gatherings, political speeches, and among ordinary people who watch events unfold in Palestine with frustration and heartbreak. At the core of this idea is the question of whether the fragmented yet powerful Muslim world, scattered across regions from North Africa to South Asia, could pool its military, economic, and diplomatic resources into a single force to defend Gaza and protect Palestinian rights. To fully understand this issue, we need to break down the vision, the technical challenges, the political realities, and the unique selling points that make this idea so powerful yet so complex. A united Muslim army for Gaza is often imagined as a coalition of the 57 Muslim-majority states, many of which are already part of international organizations like the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. In theory, if just a fraction of their combined strength were directed toward Palestine, the military and strategic balance of the region would change dramatically. Muslim-majority nations hold some of the world's largest armies, advanced missile systems, drone capabilities, and in some cases nuclear deterrence. They also control critical geographies such as the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, and strategic locations across Africa and Asia. The very idea that these assets could be unified into one coherent force captures the imagination of millions who see Gaza as a test of Muslim unity. On the technical side, let's consider military capacity. Pakistan has one of the strongest conventional armies with a professional command structure and advanced nuclear weapons. Turkey, a NATO member, has a highly capable air force, advanced drone technologies, and strategic geography bridging Europe and Asia. Iran has developed asymmetric warfare tactics, missile systems, and influence across the Middle East. Gulf nations like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, though smaller in manpower, have some of the most modern defense purchases, including state-of-the-art fighter jets and missile defense systems. North African countries such as Egypt and Algeria bring large troop numbers, combat experience, and important maritime positions. If these elements were combined, they could represent a formidable force unmatched in size and diversity. But the dream of unity doesn't just rest on weapons and troops. It also relies on coordination, strategy, and governance. One of the unique features of this vision is that it would require creating a joint command structure similar to NATO, where different nations contribute forces under a shared leadership. For Gaza, this could mean a rotational command, where leadership shifts among member nations to prevent dominance by a single country. It could also involve specialized divisions, some nations contributing air defense, others ground troops, and some focusing on cyber warfare and intelligence. This division of labor could create efficiency, while also giving each country a sense of ownership. The performance aspect of such an army would not just be measured in military strength, but in its ability to act swiftly and decisively. Currently, one of the major criticisms of Muslim nations is their slow, fragmented responses to crises in Palestine. A unified army would be designed to eliminate bureaucratic delays, establishing rapid deployment forces ready to protect civilians or deter aggression. Imagine a system where within hours of an escalation in Gaza, trained units could arrive to provide air cover, humanitarian corridors, or logistical support. This responsiveness would redefine the performance of Muslim states on the global stage, showing not just their power, but their willingness to act. Design elements of such an army would extend beyond physical warfare. A modern, united Muslim army would likely incorporate hybrid warfare strategies, combining cyber operations, intelligence gathering, psychological operations, and media influence alongside conventional military action. In today's digital era, the battle is as much about controlling narratives as it is about controlling territory. An army for Gaza would have to counter misinformation, amplify Palestinian voices, and mobilize global support in real time. Its design would also include humanitarian branches, ensuring that any military action is paired with food, medical care, and rebuilding efforts. This would set it apart from purely combat-oriented alliances, giving it a moral high ground. Now, why is this idea so unique compared to other alliances in the world? The answer lies in its symbolic value. Unlike NATO, which is based on geographical and political calculations, or regional blocs like ASEAN or the African Union, a Muslim army for Gaza would be built on a shared religious and civilizational identity. It would draw legitimacy from centuries of history, culture, and a common sense of responsibility toward Palestine as a sacred trust. The cause of Gaza resonates across the Muslim world not just as a political issue, but as a religious and moral obligation. This emotional factor is what gives the idea its unmatched selling point. It's not just about strategy, it's about solidarity. Of course, there are enormous challenges that cannot be ignored. Muslim nations are far from united. Rivalries between Sunni and Shia blocs, competition for leadership between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, and the influence of foreign powers create constant obstacles. Some Muslim nations have normalized relations with Israel, making their participation in such a force politically complicated. Others depend heavily on Western alliances for their security and economies, which would limit their freedom to join a project seen as directly opposing Western or Israeli interests. This fragmentation has historically been the Achilles heel of Muslim unity efforts. Another layer of difficulty comes from the international system. Any attempt to deploy a Muslim army for Gaza would face opposition from powerful actors such as the United States, the European Union, and Israel itself. These powers could impose sanctions, restrict arms sales, or even intervene militarily to prevent such an alliance from shifting the regional balance. The question then becomes, would Muslim nations be willing to risk their global economic and diplomatic ties for the sake of Gaza? That willingness, or lack thereof, is often what separates rhetoric from reality. However, the conversation is not purely about obstacles. There are pathways through which this vision could take shape, even if not in its full form. One scenario is a smaller coalition of willing states, such as Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, and a few Arab nations, creating a rapid reaction force specifically mandated for Gaza. Another is the formation of a joint humanitarian defense unit, where the military role is framed primarily as protecting aid and civilians rather than waging full-scale war. Such approaches might be more politically feasible while still sending a strong message of solidarity. In terms of public reception, the idea of a united Muslim army enjoys massive grassroots support across the Muslim world. From street protests to social media campaigns, ordinary people consistently call for their governments to do more than issue statements. This pressure from below creates a political incentive for leaders to at least entertain the idea, even if they hesitate to implement it. Leaders understand that Gaza has become a symbol of Muslim dignity, and ignoring it entirely risks alienating their own populations. At the same time, there are voices warning against romanticizing the concept. Critics argue that military solutions could escalate violence, dragging the entire region into wars that could devastate economies and destabilize governments. They emphasize diplomacy, international law, and non-military methods as safer, more sustainable ways to support Gaza. For these critics, the unique selling point of Muslim nations should not be their armies, but their ability to use economic power, energy resources, and international platforms to pressure Israel and its allies. This debate between military and non-military approaches reflects the diversity of thought within the Muslim world itself. Nevertheless, the discussion of a united army continues to capture attention precisely because it blends both emotional appeal and technical possibility. The Muslim world is vast, resource-rich, and strategically significant. If it were to act collectively, its impact would be undeniable. Gaza, as a flashpoint, embodies the urgency of turning potential into action. The idea of a united army becomes not just a military question, but a test of whether Muslim nations can overcome internal differences for a higher purpose. This conversation also connects to broader themes of identity and leadership. Who would lead such an army? Would it be Turkey with its modern military and historic Ottoman legacy? Would it be Pakistan with its nuclear power status? Would Saudi Arabia, as the custodian of the holy cities, claim moral leadership? Or would Iran, with its strong anti-Israel stance, push for dominance? These questions of leadership design are critical because they reflect deeper rivalries that have so far prevented unity. But they also show the richness of the Muslim world's assets. Different countries bring different strengths to the table, and if managed wisely, this diversity could become a source of power rather than division. One cannot ignore the symbolic power of even discussing this idea. For Palestinians in Gaza, hearing that millions of Muslims worldwide want their nations to form a united army provides a sense of hope and dignity. For global audiences, it highlights that Palestine remains at the center of Muslim consciousness. And for policymakers, it serves as a reminder that unresolved injustice in Gaza is not just a local conflict, but a global issue with the potential to mobilize entire civilizations. The ultimate measure of success for such an initiative would not necessarily be defeating Israel militarily, but shifting the dynamics of accountability, deterrence, and solidarity. Even the creation of a credible joint force without firing a single shot could change how Israel and its allies calculate their actions in Gaza. The very existence of a ready unified Muslim army could serve as a powerful deterrent, preventing aggression through the threat of collective response.